Oh, I see it. All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you all for joining us. My name is Alyssa Karpenka, and I'm the event coordinator for McNally Robinson Booksellers in Saskatoon. This event is coming to you from Treaty 6 territory, the traditional lands of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis nations. Just to note that this event is being live streamed to our YouTube page, so please be aware of the webcam beside you. I'd also like to take this moment to encourage you to silence your phones for the duration of the event tonight. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Saskatoon launch of Just in Case, Final Affair Arrangements by Elaine Lozinski and published by Big Moose Publishing. Thank you to Elaine for being here tonight and for working with us to create this event. Elaine is a Certified Executor Advisor based out of Saskatoon. She's a final affair consultant, lecturer, and member of the Saskatoon Estate Planning Council. She uses a practical approach with her clients for getting affairs in order for emergency, incapacity, end of life, and other support needs. A planner by nature, Elaine strives to bring clarity to the overwhelming world of final affairs. Her goals with Just in Case are to educate, prepare, and empower people to make their own decisions regarding final affairs before something happens. I'll now turn things over to Elaine. Please give her a warm welcome.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate you coming and taking time out of your busy lives. I know that nothing is as exciting as talking about final affairs on a Thursday afternoon, so I really appreciate it. There are a few people I'd like to thank. My husband, Darren, I really appreciate your support and love and patience with me as I wrote this book. I want to thank Faye Thompson from Big Moose Publishing, because without her, I wouldn't have been able to do it. I want to thank Kara Gardner-Watkins for introducing me to Faye, because if that hadn't happened, this book wouldn't have happened. So I appreciate that. And above all, I want to thank Harold Empey for trusting me to continue the journey that he began so long ago. So with that, tonight, I'm going to get started here. So again, thank you for coming. Over time, I've come to learn that a lot of us have questions surrounding final affairs. What are they? What do they mean? Do I really have to do it? Isn't it just for the wealthy? Can't my family just take care of it? Final affairs involve some of the most unpopular topics around subjects like end of life, finances, maybe religion, family dynamics, and those really deep, yucky, uncomfortable topics that we don't really want to talk about. So we don't. We don't think about them. We don't talk about them until it's too late. I decided to publish Just in Case to help answer these questions, to help start these conversations, and to help understand something that touches each one of us one day. We all have our own reasons for being here tonight. Maybe you want to understand more about final affairs. Perhaps you have a story that brought you here. Most of us do. Something like, you know what, when my parents passed away, it took forever to settle their estate. They had no plans made. They didn't talk to us about it. My siblings were stretched out all over the province, all over the country, and we just couldn't agree on anything. It was a complete disaster. You're here because you want to do better for your family, but you just don't know quite how to start. Just in Case teaches you how to get your affairs in order. It breaks up this job into separate categories. It explains the processes, the requirements, and the roles involved. It offers suggestions on what to consider and include while planning. It has fill-in-the-blank worksheets to make sure everything is thought out and documented. It is a wonderful tool to give yourself peace of mind and ease the burden on your loved ones. Maybe you're here because you want to help your parents. I know people my age are starting to help their parents with their day-to-day activities, maybe even helping them plan their finances. And while we're going through this process, we've discovered that we have questions that we want to ask our parents and need to ask our parents. Something like, you know what, if I have to do their banking one day, do I understand their complete financial situation? Maybe you're starting to wonder what they might want by way of funeral arrangements. Have you ever wandered around your parents' house wondering where did they put the keys to the shed? The categories in Just in Case have been created to answer these questions questions that come out of need or requirement, out of curiosity, or simply for closure. And finally, maybe you are here because one day you will be power of attorney, proxy, or executor to somebody's estate. And you want to know a little bit more about those roles and what they mean and the responsibilities with them. You know you don't want to be scouring around your person's home trying to find their last income tax statement, their social insurance number, their marriage certificate, or their passport, all which could be stored in a shoebox under the bed or stuffed in a sock in the bottom of the closet for security reasons. Believe me, I know this happens. You have a busy life and you want this job to go as smooth as possible. Stats Canada says that 99% of the Canadians intend to appoint a family or friend as their executor. A fun fact, this job lasts 1.5 to 2 years, even for the simplest estate. More so if the estate is large, complicated, extra small, there are family disagreements or challenges to the will. It is equivalent to a part-time job. The role of power of attorney can go on indefinitely. Again, for proxy, power of attorney, and executor, just in case helps you understand these roles and responsibilities, the time and the work commitments involved. It ensures you know what you're getting yourself into. It helps you be prepared for the job and helps you gather the information and documents that you need when the time comes. The definition of final affairs is to organize and gather the things related to your personal and your financial life, to answer questions and provide information at a time when you can't. It is for your surviving partner, spouse, family, power of attorney, or executor. It is sometimes referred to getting your affairs in order, estate planning, or succession planning. And it is often associated for dying and end of life, but it is for so much more. It is for emergencies, incapacity, and other support needs or situations. What do you think about when you think about final affairs? Well, most people I know know what I like to call the big four: wills, power of attorney, healthcare directive, and maybe funeral planning. But there are what I call softer sides to final affair planning as well: personal information, contact lists, financial information and important documents, family history, philanthropy and charity, and other considerations. Now, many people don't want to bother with final affair planning, and I've heard so many excuses. I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to jinx things by talking about my own death. It costs too much. You know what? I don't care. I'm dead. Many people believe that their family can take care of these things, but for legal matters such as healthcare directive, power of attorney, or estate administration, when there's no legal documentation in place, there is law that determines what happens, who does what, where things go, and more. Also, leaving it up to your family makes a terrible situation that much worse. Remember, this is a highly chaotic, extremely stressful, and very emotional time for your family. A death in the family has the largest financial and emotional impact on a family, more than a new job, marriage, babies, divorce, even winning the lottery. In life, we do a lot of planning. We plan for our education, our weddings, our children, our careers, and our retirement. In fact, some people spend more time planning a 2-week vacation than they do planning their affairs. Now, don't you think your life is worth more time than that? These are your affairs, your responsibilities. Please don't assume people know. Talk to your family. In fact, family discussion is one of the most important tasks of final affairs. And unfortunately, not talking to your family is the top mistake people make when getting their affairs in order. There is a saying, death can bring out a crazy in the family, and sadly, it is true. Trust me, I've heard a lot of stories. Family situations can be complicated. We don't know what others will do in times of high stress or mourning. Emotions can run high, problems can emerge. Fights can happen over the smallest things. I have a story of 2 sisters, and when their mother died, these 2 sisters fought over the dining room table, so much so that they never spoke again. Now, this may seem like an extreme situation to you, but trust me, I've heard stories like this and even worse. They're more common than you think. Some families have sensitive issues like clashing personalities, addictions and mental health issues, blended families or prior marriages, And just these make for more in-depth legal consideration, more so if the family doesn't get along. Any plans you do make won't see the light of day if your family is arguing. Just in case talks about talking with your loved ones, who you should talk to and what you should talk about, ways to go about approaching these subjects with your loved ones, and hopefully reducing the chance of disputes and estate litigation. Just in case also talks about information storage, security concerns, and who to trust with this highly confidential information. One final mistake in final affair planning is good old procrastination. I'll get to it one day. Please don't buy this book, take it home and put it on the shelf. Remember, pre-planning allows for time, but it doesn't mean you should wait indefinitely. Just in case has tips on how to start and finish your planning. In part 2 of the book, Just in Case explores 11 final affair categories, and I'll touch on these categories next. Section 3 and 8 look at financial information and important documents. Do you know what happens to your bank account after you die? Sometimes funds can be frozen upon death. What about your other assets? A couple of stats for you. In 2022, the Bank of Canada had $1.8 billion of unclaimed accounts. And in Canada, it is estimated that a minimum of 25% of all life insurance policies go unclaimed, all because no one knew they existed. Just in case helps you document the assets you worked so hard for your whole life. Find out what happens to these assets upon death. Understand asset value, asset transition, and relating tax implications. Take time to consider succession planning if you own farm, land, properties, or a business. Gathering financial information is one of the most detailed and work-intensive part of getting your affairs in order. You are creating lists for all of your major assets, liabilities, and income. Things like insurances, investments, trusts, tax returns, utilities, and details for all. There's lots to think about and lots to understand. And the worksheets and Just in Case help you ensure that nothing gets left out. Information in this section is necessary for creating a will and is extremely important to you for surviving spouse, partner, power of attorney, or executor. Any work that you do now will be so helpful to them in the future. Section 6 is will and estate administration. A few more stats for you. 51% of Canadians do not have a will, according to a 2017 Angus Reid poll. Other polls show that number as high as 60%. Of those that do have a will, 35% of them are not up to date. Over the next 20 years, it is estimated that $1.5 trillion of assets in Canada will transfer to the next generation. Real estate makes up 1/3 of that amount. Do you have a will? If you don't have a will, it's called intestate, and this includes wills that are not valid because they weren't created properly, or original wills that cannot be found. With no will, even for the smallest estate, property is divided according to the Intestate Succession Act. Your estate must go through the court systems. It is very expensive. There's lots of legal bills. It's very time consuming. There's lots of red tape and things can get stalled in court. With no will, it's hard to track down all of the assets that you have, hard to identify the people with the right to inherit. There is a chance someone might get left out. Somebody has to go to court to prove that no will existed, and then somebody has to go to a court to apply to be the estate administrator, which is the role of executor when no will exists. As you can see already, there's huge time delays and lots of legal fees for your estate. So you can pay now to have a will done, or your estate pays later at a much higher price. In addition to discussing what happens with no will, Just in Case goes over the 4 things you need to think about and do before creating a will. And these things take some time and thought. 1, gather your financial information, which we've already touched on. 2, what to give and to whom. Now, it's not as easy as you think it is. You have to understand what your estate consists of before you can decide what you can give away. Understanding things like rights of survivorship, assets like life insurances, mortgages, registered investments that are either jointly owned or have a named beneficiary upon creation. These items are not part of your estate and should not go in your will. There are also certain restrictions and considerations to be made by law for minors, adult dependents, spouse, and any contractual obligations that you might have. You have to understand the process of estate administration. By understanding the job and role of an executor and understanding how estate administration is handled, all helps you determine how you approach your plans. You also have to determine who you want for executor. What is an executor? It is the person that you name in your will who has the responsibility of managing and settling your estate. A Vancouver lawyer named Barbara Jansen said, to be an executor today, you need combat training and a psych degree. Don't choose someone you feel should have the job, like your oldest child. Choose someone who is right for the job. It's just like finding the right person for any job. Just in case discusses traits to consider when choosing an executor and power of attorney, like, are they capable? Are they physically and emotionally capable? Maybe they might be too grief-stricken. Do they have experience? Jobs like bookkeeping, understanding legal documentation, the law. Are they available? Where are they at in their own lives? Do they have a young family, or do they already have a full-time job? Are they physically close to you to make decisions, manage your assets, and more? If they live outside of the province, consider the time away that they're going to need from work to do these duties and the expense that they'll have for travel. Do they have good people skills? Remember, this is not an easy job. They have to deal with family, beneficiaries, the legal system, government agencies, especially the tax department. You have to have somebody who's not easily intimidated or influenced, can hold their own, and is not afraid to ask for questions or for help when required. In the will and estate section, just in case talks about appointing a sole or joint executors with pros and cons for each. It discusses having an alternative executor or a backup, the requirements for creating a valid will, costs associated with estate administration, probate. It talks about corporate executors and trust companies. It has a letter of direction, which is a letter which indicates what you want to do with your invaluable or sentimental items that do not go in your will. It talks about estate litigation or challenges to a will and things to watch out for. It discusses do-it-yourself will kits, when to review or redo your will. And finally, just in case, encourage you to have discussion with your family and with your executor so that they know where you're coming from and that there are no surprises when the time comes. Section 5 is Healthcare Directive, otherwise known as a living will. This is direction given to your healthcare providers so that they know what treatments are acceptable to you. Just in case, encourages you to think about these treatments, to think about the treatments that you want and how that impacts your loved ones. Just in case, walks you through requirements for creating a healthcare directive. It describes the role of proxy, which is the person who makes these decisions with a directive. Remember, this is a tough and very emotional job. You have to make sure that the person understands your wishes and can carry them out. What happens if you don't have a directive? With no directive by law, your next of kin makes these decisions. So make sure that they like you. Section 4 talks about power of attorney. This is a legal document that appoints another person to act on your behalf in connection with your personal and your property affairs. Basically, they can do anything that you legally can do. Just in case, talks about why you need a power of attorney, what happens when there is not one, the different kinds of power of attorney available, the responsibility for these roles, and what to consider when choosing the right person. A power of attorney is one of the most powerful and dangerous documents that there is out there. And unfortunately, power of attorney abuse is extremely high. Just in case, talks about what you can do to prevent this abuse and make sure that you understand the documents that you are signing. Section 7 is funerals and memorial services. Let me tell you, things are moving and shaking in the funeral world. People are moving away from traditional funerals, and there are lots of choices to be made. Just in case goes over some of the things that you need to think about and consider when planning for a funeral or memorial service. It talks about the benefits of pre-planning. Remember, this is a hard, emotional, very stressful time for your family, and fast decisions need to be made. And people tend to agonize over the smallest details. That families overspend by hundreds, even thousands of dollars, thinking it is what their loved one wanted or what they deserved. And here's where family disagreements can start. Pre-planning is sparing your family from all of these situations, and it saves your estate money in the long run. Just in case talks about information required for funeral homes. Do you know your mother's maiden name and where your parents were born? Do your children? Does your executor? This information and more is required by a funeral home to prepare death certificates and other government documents, which leads me on to section 9, family information. Why is this important? Well, maybe you're the only person left who can remember certain facts. And again, remember, some of this information is required by certain forms. But more importantly, years after your estate is settled up, it is things in this section that your family holds dear for years to come. This section includes things like family trees, family stories, address history, a place to store letters for your loved ones, and a place for memorabilia like newspaper clippings, military decorations, photos, and perfected family recipes. I know when my grandma died, she took with her her famous donut recipe, and it was just one part of grandma that we miss. Section 1 has personal information, and this includes information that may be required in case of an emergency or in a death. Do you know your partner's medication and their dosages? Are you able to access their phone or other or computer to gather information or maybe close accounts? This section helps you indicate detailed medical information, technological devices, where are they and how to access them. It enlists your employment, your education, your memberships and registrations, and where you get your mail. These final sections may seem obvious to you, but when the time comes, they're not obvious to others. In an emergency or in a death, your loved ones are in a high state of grief. They're very stressed. They're not thinking straight. It is hard to find what is in front of you during these times, let alone trying to search up some of this information. Just in case helps you by ensuring you have it all documented. Other categories in just in case include section 2, contact lists. This helps you identify both personal and organizational contacts for people and places that are on a first to know basis. Section 10 is philanthropy and charity, talks about giving back now or legacy giving through your will and the tax benefits for both. Section 11 includes final considerations such as pet care instructions, housing. It looks at aging in place, downsizing and senior housing options. It looks at retirement planning, things to consider for a healthy transition. Shared learning for teaching each other those jobs in the house that one person usually takes care of. And finally, it talks about the value of decluttering, reducing or downsizing clothes, tools, books, collections. You've got boxes in the basement, the garage, your closet. We all have it. We all could use downsizing. So that was a lot of information, right? Well, don't worry. You don't have to remember. That's what just in case is for. It works for you by ensuring that your final affairs are thought out, documented, and complete. It walks you through each step. The book has fill-in-the-blank worksheets to ensure that nothing gets left out and includes survivor and executor checklists and more. If you are going to be somebody's power of attorney or executor, it helps you understand the roles, work, and time commitments, and that you have all of the documentation that you need in place, and it is accessible to you. In fact, I know a story, a person came up to me and said, somebody had asked her to be, I'm not sure if it was an executor or a power of attorney, but they said that they wouldn't accept the role until they did their just in case homework. The benefits of just in case suggest things that you might not consider on your own. It allows for self-education. It helps you get your questions answered. It helps you become familiar with the languages and processes and helps prepare you for professional appointments like lawyers, financial planners, accountants ahead of time. And most importantly, it helps you finish the task. It's a great conversation starter for your family, with your parents, your power of attorney, and your executor. As you've heard today, most of these final affairs sections have to be addressed by somebody at some point. Why not make it you? Every large journey begins with one small step, and even the smallest amount that you do now will help those who need to look after your affairs in the future. Are your affairs in order? Life brings variety to all. Every family is different, and every individual is unique. Please take the time to consider your own needs. Be responsible, be proactive, and most important, be you, just in case. So now I've got some time for questions. If anybody has a question, just raise their hand. Don't be shy and don't bite. Yes.
Would you suggest that each individual person have their own just book, or is there enough space to document for like a married couple, for example?
So the question, in case you didn't hear, was does each person need to have their own just in case book? It's up to your personal preference. It does kind of go through like one individual person, but that's not to say you can't like copy and paste and stick it in the same book. So yes, thank you. Yes.
Is everything in here Canadian based?
Yes. Yes. So all of the legal, especially the legal information, is all Canadian based. I tried to make it general enough that it is not provincially based, because estate law differs by province. So if you are from another province, I just highly recommend that you just double check with a lawyer in the province that you're in, or there's so much information available online as well. So just make sure that if you're from out of province, or you're giving it to somebody out of province, that they are aware that provincial law differs and that they should double check on their own. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, well, I think I'll pass it back on, and thank you very much for coming out. I just wanted to say I am giving some fall classes this winter, or this fall, about final affair planning. So if you're interested, please come see me in the back. Thank you.
All right, I'll just say a quick word before I let you go. First of all, I'd like to thank Elaine for being with us again tonight. And we have copies of Just in Case Final Affair Arrangements on the desk to your right. And if you'd like your copy signed, or if you'd just like to say hello, Elaine will be happy to meet you at the signing table at the very back. Thank you so much for coming out tonight, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.